All right, we have Jadora McClendon, and we have our audience right here. All right, go ahead, Jadora.
Wearing school uniforms is something to consider between high schoolers, students, and teachers and parents. Because they have to pay for uniforms. Schools, they have to enforce the code. And students, they actually have to wear the clothing. So imagine a country. Students all have to wear school uniforms. They don't have the ability to look different. They all look the same. Now imagine a country where students are allowed to wear different clothing and to look different, to express themselves, to make sure they're like being their own person. Well, the two scenarios that I asked you to imagine are about school uniforms, which is my topic. I know most of you know about the debate going back and forth across the country about whether schools will have school uniforms or whether they will not. I know that schools have different limits in school policy, and some schools are actually really strict. As I went through my elementary years, which were not really delightful, but I had to experience two different uniform policies. One with my all-girls school and one with DECA. At Trinity Adams, we did not have the ability to look different at all. We all have to wear the same thing, same underclothes, and same ties, and our hair had to be done. If there wasn't, that's part of the code, you will get in trouble. DECA, they were more lenient. We had to wear school uniforms, but we was also able to wear our own shoes, and we were also able to carry purses. Our boys would wear different belts or something. That gave us a little self-individuality, and we was able to be our own person. I believe school uniforms should not be in school. I believe that we should have a dress code because it keeps each student from dressing inappropriately and boys having their pants hanging off their waist. I don't believe we should have a school uniform because it limits our self-esteem and limit us from us being our own person. Looking at this from a high school perspective, school uniforms negatively affect students. It keeps them from being able to express themselves. It lowers your self-esteem. Wearing school uniforms, it keeps students from being offended. It helps them from being offended because some students wear disrespectful things on their shirts, and it helps them from being disrespectful or wearing sexual clothing. And sexual clothing is when girls wear sexual things around boys that girls claim or their boyfriends. You know how some girls get when girls wear sexual things around their boyfriends. Creating a dress code actually helps students to be not sexually, but socially accepted. Because if you wear a uniform, you don't have to buy special clothing to fit in. You don't have to wear certain things to fit in. You actually can fit in you actually be friends with groups you're normally not friends with. If you don't have a school uniform, it's you get in where you fit in. If you can afford certain things, you fit in with that group. So you can afford the most expensive, you fit in with the most expensive group, popular group. If you can't afford it, you are with the people who don't really care. But this also opens doors for being picked on, because students who can't afford it or can't afford the latest shoes or the latest styles are picked on because they don't look the same as everybody else, or they consider not having money. And parents are affected because they have to spend the amount of money to make their child fit in. And I don't think any parents wants to spend that money for their kids to be fitting in. It also creates division among students, so it divides them in social groups or classes that are considered popular, non-popular, middle popular, cool people to talk to, or just lames. Parents, they benefit from school uniforms because they do not have to deal with arguing with their kids every morning. They don't have to deal with the argument because students know exactly what they're wearing. If they don't, they have to figure out what they're going to wear, argue with their parents on what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. And parents do not want to go through that headache because they already have to get up in the morning, fix breakfast, get the child ready for school, and get ready for work themselves. According to families.com, this woman named Judy, she's really benefits from school uniforms because she says she doesn't have to deal with arguing with her daughters, and her daughters actually know what they're going to wear. And you do not have to deal with much debate among them. Schools benefit from school uniforms because they don't have to keep enforcing the code. They don't have to keep telling the students to pull up your pants or put a jacket on because your shirt isn't appropriate. They don't have to deal with that, keep enforcing the code, because it's very stressful for teachers to keep enforcing that code every day. It gets kind of irritating to them. It creates a positive atmosphere in the school. If you all look good, wearing the same thing, wearing school uniforms, you do not have to deal with being sought out because your clothes are not appropriate or the teacher doesn't like your clothes. So if you're all wearing the same thing, it's like positivity in the classroom and in the school. And wearing school uniforms, in the research that shows that it actually helps discipline issues because students actually respect the teachers more because they don't have to. It's like they don't have to focus on anything else. They can just focus on the teacher and the lesson that's at hand. So now that we cover most of the topics of positive school uniform effects from students, parents, and teachers' point of views, now we'll experience that through negative point of views from the same perspective. School uniform affects the school environment in the classroom because it doesn't. It keeps them from being the same. Students are not able to express themselves, so they often have to look the same and act the same, or to be within themselves. They're not able to wear clothing to express themselves, to be individual. Allowing students to pick their own clothing sends a message, a powerful message to them that they have the most basic self-determination in picking their clothing. So basically showing them that they're young adults and they're able to choose what they want to wear. School uniforms do not improve attendance or preparedness for exams or test scores. According to the University of Houston, school uniforms do not have any impact on school attendance or the clothing or the effect that students have in the classrooms or the exam grades. It just remains the same. School uniforms does affect the focus that they have in classes, so they don't remain focused in class, do not pay attention to the teacher or the lesson that's at hand because they're more paying attention to the clothing that they're wearing and the clothing that the friends are wearing around them. Parents are negatively affected by clothing because our school uniforms, because they have to pay for it. So if they don't have school uniforms, they have to pay for clothing multiple times and having a huge wardrobe for children. And according to classrooms.synonym.com, the more students that wear school uniforms, the more clothes they have to buy. Just the parents have to buy because they have to buy different clothing for when school ends. They have to buy certain outfits when the student changes their clothes. So today I talked to you about school uniforms and the negative and positive effects about it. Now I have a few questions for you. How many of you have an opinion about school uniforms? What is that opinion?
Well, I think school uniforms are beneficial because it brings a sense of structure to the school. When guests come in, they see all these kids dressed alike, so they're there to learn and not to have a fashion show and all that stuff. So I think it's beneficial.
Okay. Thank you. Now that we heard from this young lady, I feel like school uniforms differ from school to school and that there's many opinions about school uniforms. And I feel like many people have opinions and there will be a wide range of questions as we go through high school years and schools change. And there's a bunch of questions that should be asked. Thank you.